Hi, everybody. This is Sara Fienup, Behavior Specialist with the Lower Hudson Regional Partnership Center, and I'm here today to talk to you about how to respond to challenging behavior with composure. Check out our first two episodes, the first one being setting up routines at home, and the second one being how to set clear and consistent behavior expectations before you watch this one. Thanks. So those of you that are new to us, I am a school psychologist and a board certified behavior analyst, and I also have two kids at home, ages 7 and 4. And today I'm going to be talking to you about evidence-based strategies that you can use at home to manage challenging behaviors. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so you can follow along with me. Okay, so we're going to go through 4 main agenda items today. The first one being using a positive behavior support approach as our lens. The second one being that we want to lay the groundwork so that when challenging behaviors do occur, we're in a good place to ensure that our strategies will work. And then we're going to be talking about just general considerations when addressing challenging behaviors. And then lastly, we're going to talk about 4 specific strategies that you can use with your kids that are applicable to any age group. So let's talk about that positive behavior support model. So as a behavior analyst, I use applied behavior analysis as my framework and grounding in everything that we do. And we need to remember these 3 points when we're talking about behavior. Number 1, behavior is communication. So if you have a child or any individual that's engaging in a behavior repeatedly, we have to think about what that individual is trying to communicate or what the function of that behavior is. Is it that the individual is trying to avoid or exit something? Is the individual trying to get access to an item or an activity? Is the person trying to get your attention? Are they trying to manipulate or control the situation? So those are all questions that we want to ask if the behavior is happening repeatedly. We have to try to figure out why it's happening. We understand that behavior communicates something. We also know that behavior is learned, that there's a history in place that has made it so that that behavior has been reinforced in some way, and that's why it keeps happening. But on the same token, all behaviors can be taught. So the importance of the second session that we had was about setting up what your expected behaviors are. And before you can do that, before you set up your expected behaviors, it's really going to be hard to know what you want of your child. So first you need to figure out what you want to see from your child, then you need to teach it explicitly, okay? And then we also want to remember that punishment does not teach someone what to do instead. It does not teach the individual how to behave. So even though as parents it's easier sometimes, and especially when emotions are flying high, it's easy to jump to punishment. But we have to remember that punishment does not necessarily teach what the expected behavior is, does not teach the child what to do instead. It just sends a message that what you're doing is wrong, but it doesn't tell the student or the child what to do instead. Okay, so we want to keep those in mind. So laying the groundwork. This slide is really about making sure that you've done that prerequisite work that we talked about on episode 2. And the reason for that is because if you don't, then you're going to be kind of paddling upstream rather. It's going to be really difficult to manage challenging behaviors if you haven't done this prerequisite work in the beginning. So the reason we want to, or the way that you identify your expected behaviors is this. There's 2 kind of steps to it. Number 1, we want to jot down the most challenging behaviors that we have at home or in the community with our kids. And then we want to identify the positive alternative to each of those challenging behaviors. So what do you want the kid to do instead of that challenging behavior? Here are some examples. If whining is a challenging behavior, well, what do you want them to do instead? Maybe you want them to ask what they want in a calm voice. Instead of hitting, you want them to keep their hands and feet to themselves. Instead of talking back, you want them to be kind and respectful. Instead of not listening, you want them to follow directions right away. And then after you have identified those expected behaviors, you want to, as much as possible, notice when your kid does them and praise them. And that looks differently for different kids. Some kids want that over-the-top praise and knowing exactly what they did well. Other kids, it's just kind of a pat on the back or a short statement about what they did well. making sure to use behavior specific praise. So instead of just good job, saying, hey, I really appreciated that you asked me with a calm voice. I like that. That's what we mean by behavior specific praise. Okay. But when you do all that, you're still going to have challenging behaviors. Hate to say it, but you will, because we're all human and we engage in behaviors that other people don't necessarily like or aren't necessarily socially appropriate or functional. So when they do occur, we want you to keep these things in mind. Okay, number one, be consistent. If you say you're going to follow through with something, follow through with it. The worst thing you can really do for your kids is be inconsistent in your approach. And that means within your own self and also with different caregivers. If you're saying one thing and your spouse is saying another, you're going to actually be making the behavior even worse. So really want to get on the same page. And you want to, if you stick to a rule, stick to it. Don't change your mind, because then you're going to be opening yourself up to arguments and power struggles in the future. Okay. All right. Secondly, we want to be specific yet brief. So when we are addressing challenging behavior, you want to be specific to what the behavior is that's a problem, and be specific about what the behavior is that you want the individual to do instead. But you want to keep it brief. And the reason for that is because if you don't keep it brief and you go on and on and on and on and on, you're detracting from the message, and you also could be unintentionally reinforcing that problem behavior by giving that attention to the individual. Okay, so want to keep it very brief. And we also want to be calm and respectful. So this is a really difficult one. I am, guilty of this as well. I have yelled at my children before. I hate to admit it, but we've all been there. But we all also know that once you get to that place where you're yelling or arguing or raising your voice, it doesn't feel good, and it's really not that effective. And it's you're probably all here listening to this for a reason. So we've been there, and we really want to try to be calm and respectful. So really the fourth point of this is to take care of yourself and to recognize your own buttons that are being pressed, and recognize your own mental health needs, because if you're not in a good place, you're not going to be able to manage those challenging behaviors quite as effectively. Okay, so let's talk about these specific strategies. So the first one is called ignore, attend, and praise. Then we're going to talk about error correction. Then we're going to be talking about providing a choice. And lastly, a behavior contract. So first, let's talk about ignore, attend, praise. So this is really most effective when you have more than one child in the house. If you only have one, this one might be a little bit more difficult, but it still could be done, I suppose, with an adult in the building. So here's how it works. You ignore the challenging behavior, but you attend to another child that's engaging in appropriate behavior. And then as soon as the kid engages in the appropriate behavior, then you provide praise. This is what it looks like. Let's say Jacob is jumping on the furniture. We don't want him to jump on the furniture. You could say to the other kid who is actually being appropriate, Rose, you're playing so nicely with your feet on the floor. I really like that, while ignoring Jacob's behavior. After seeing Rose receive positive attention, Jacob might not, but he might get off the furniture because he sees, oh, Rose is getting attention for not being on the furniture. I want that too. And then as soon as Jacob gets off the furniture, you're going to say, Jacob, thank you for getting off the furniture. I appreciate that, right? So this is one example of many, many different times this can be used. But think about if there's a behavior that your kid is engaging in that's bothering you or is unsafe or just not following those expected behaviors, then who else can you pay attention to? And this one is really very effective and underutilized often. So keep this one in mind. Let's talk about error correction. So this is just, the name is really implying that behaviors are errors. Challenging behaviors can be just errors. It's just like academic errors or errors in learning how to do a new skill. And I like this frame of mind because it reminds us that behaviors are skills. They're all being learned. And so we don't want to jump to conclusions thinking that your kid is doing something on purpose or they should know better. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's really just an error that we need to help them learn how to correct. So here's what error correction looks like. You want to remain calm as much as possible and keep it brief, like we talked about before. Then you're going to tell or show your child exactly what you want them to do. So we're going to try to stay away from don't do that, don't do this, stop doing that. And we're going to instead focus on what do you want them to do instead. That's where that, coming up with your expected behaviors comes in handy. And then as soon as the kid engages in the expected behavior, you're going to provide praise. Now, it might happen right away. It might need some prompting. It might need some hand-over-hand prompting or some physical prompting, depending on the age of the kid, the developmental level. You might need to have some reminders, but you want to make sure that you are noticing when they do engage in the appropriate behavior. And then it's optional to tell them why it's an important role. And this depends on the severity of the situation, it depends on the time that you really want to be spending talking about it, but it's something that you might want to consider. So here's an example. Chris is on his cell phone when he's not supposed to be. It's lights out time and he's on his cell phone. You're going to say something like, Chris, turn off your phone and put it on the shelf. Very specific, very brief. We're not getting into power struggles here. We're not, talking about how he's done this a million times. And then as soon as he does it, hopefully he'll do it right away, or she'll do it right away. And then you're just going to say, thank you, appreciate it. Of course, a non-example, like I just said, is going to be getting into power struggles or bringing that emotion piece into it, or talking about the history of this behavior, like how many times have we gone over this? We know that that's not going to lead to behavior change, right? That's going to lead to an argument. So we're going to try to stay away from that. Here's another strategy. This is called providing a choice. So this is how it looks. You provide a choice between the desired behavior and a less preferred choice. And then you follow through. Here's what it could look like. Sorry, I can't move this picture here. I don't really know why I can't move the little box here. Anyway, it says, Maria, show me that you can get dressed or I will have to help you. Now, this is an example that comes straight from my house because I don't know about your kids, but they did not want to be helped. They wanted to do it all themselves when they were 3, 4 years old. So saying that I'm going to help them if they can't get dressed themselves was an aversive consequence. So again, Maria, show me that you can get dressed or I will have to help you. Here's another one. Derek, you need to put the lightsaber down or it will go away for a week. Okay, the lightsaber. This is a true story. Okay. Lucy, you can get your work done now or you will have to do it later in this screen time. So again, you're starting with what you want them to do. It's very specific. And then the second option, the second choice is something that's usually less preferred. And more often than not, the kid's going to choose the first one. Okay. Now this is usually a nice one to use, this providing a choice, if the error correction has not worked. So you've tried giving an error correction, like you've tried saying you need to put the lightsaber down, but they haven't done it, then you can provide the choice. You need to put the lightsaber down or it's going to go away for a week. And then again, follow through. If you're not following through, you're breaking that consistency and your kid's not going to believe you next time. And what good is it going to do? Okay, lastly, behavior contract. This one's really nice. It's very effective. It's got a lot of research behind it. Here's what it looks like. You're going to identify 1 to 2 behavioral goals in positively stated terms. So that means instead of saying what you want your kid to stop doing, you're going to identify 1 or 2 things you want them to start doing or doing more of. Then you're going to list the rewards and exactly how they're going to be earned. You're going to list the consequences, if any, and when they will be delivered. And then you're going to have you and your child sign them. And if there's anyone else involved, another parent, a teacher, a grandparent, they're going to sign it as well because it's a contract. Then you're going to review the contract regularly and modify it as needed. It might work the first time. It might need to be modified in that you need to manage your expectations or increase or decrease the reinforcers. Here's an example of goals that might be addressed with the behavior contract. Ethan will use words instead of throwing things when he's angry at mom. Second goal could be Ethan will complete his chores without arguing. So as you can see here, it's talking about what the kid can do. It's not just won't be throwing things. It's he'll use his words. And it's not just won't argue about chores. It's he will complete his chores without arguing. So it's focused on the positive, just kind of language choice there, language modification, but it's really focusing on what you want the kid to do instead, that positive behavior support model. And then you might have something like this. Mom will put a check mark on the dry erase board when Ethan meets a goal or uses one of the strategies. When he gets 5 check marks, he'll get 5 extra minutes of video game time. So when it says strategies, you might be wondering what I mean by that, and I'm going to go ahead and show you what this contract could look like. So this is something I found on understood.org, and it's a really great website, actually. I highly recommend it. So hopefully you can see this. This is a parent-child behavior contract. You're going to, let me show you the example first. It's a couple examples. So here's Ethan. It begins on April 10th, and it will be reviewed on May 1st to see if we need to change anything. Here's those goals. So Ethan will use words instead of throwing things when he's angry at mom. And here are some strategies. Not all behavior contracts have strategies included in them, but this one does, and I like it. Strategies are when mom holds up 5 fingers as a signal, Ethan will count to 5 to help him think before he acts. When Ethan tries to say why he's upset, mom will focus on him and really listen, which is cool, right? It's talking about what the mom is going to do, not just one-sided. Ethan will jump on his trampoline to help calm down. Here's another goal. Ethan will complete his chores without arguing. Here are some strategies to help him get there. Ethan will take a break when he's feeling frustrated. Ethan will start his chores earlier so he's less tired when doing them. Mom will use a timer to help Ethan to see how long it takes to get chores done. Great, cool. Here are some rewards and consequences. Rewards for using the strategies. Mom will put a check mark on the dry erase board when Ethan meets a goal or uses one of the strategies. When he gets 5 check marks, he'll get 5 extra minutes of video game time. 5 minutes, I would start with a little more than that, honestly. I think we wanted to make, we want to incentivize it, but that's okay. Maybe that's enough for Ethan. Consequences for not using the strategies. Mom will tell Ethan to go to his designated calm down spot. After he calms down, he'll clean up anything he threw and do his chores before video game or free time. And then room for signatures. And then here's another one about getting to school on time for Skyla, and also taking responsibility for her actions. And we have rewards and consequences. Really great resources here. So this is on understood.org, and I will also be posting this resource on the Google Drive. So we talked about a few strategies, and hopefully these were helpful for you. I am available for any discussion, any questions. You can email me at sfienup@pnwboces.org. Go ahead and put this up here real quick. And that concludes our 3rd session about responding to challenging behavior with composure. Thank you.